PC gaming has been collapsing in an explosion. It limped into the modern era with one of the steepest cost increases in hardware history, through memory prices of all things. And today, RAM costs are so absurd that a 64 gigabyte kit can rival the price of a next gen console. And that's not hyperbole, that's the market reality. And for a moment, there was a rumor circulating that ASUS, one of the biggest PC hardware brands on earth, was preparing to enter the RAM manufacturing market directly. If this was true, it could have shaken the whole industry, possibly saving gaming as a whole, where prices are concerned. Competition might have driven the prices down, but the rumor turned out to be just that, a rumor, debunked, and memory prices kept climbing anyway. So the question that today's video explores is, did PC gaming actually get ruined by this? Does the next generation of consoles get affected? And was it ever really saved? Spoiler, not really. So how did this all get started? Well, let's rewind. Back in the DDR2 and DDR3 era, memory was predictable. Some would even call it boring. Upgrading 8GB to 16GB was a modest expense. Prices fluctuated, but they didn't drive people out of the hobby. Upgrades felt optional, not punitive. And that changed dramatically as the transition to DDR4 and then DDR5 accelerated. Memory stopped being just another part, it became a major line item on your build sheet. To just run your other pieces of hardware, not even your software. And then games caught up. If you wanted to play games like Cyberpunk, oh my goodness, good luck with your 8GB of RAM at any decent graphical fidelity. So when did the first real crisis begin? Well, in the 2017-2018 years, RAM prices spiked due to supply constraints and smartphone demand. Yeah, something we take for granted, smartphones, started eating up RAM like no tomorrow. And that was the first real warning sign that the memory market could behave unpredictably. Prices soared, then softened, but the floor had risen forever. Nothing resets to the base value. And mark my words, these current RAM prices, if they dip back down, will never reset to what they were before. And since then, the 2017-2018 years, prices never have truly returned to their old baseline. It was like watching a price ladder with no bottom rung. And as I said, this really began when DDR4 became DDR5. The DDR5 launch, well, it told manufacturers that the price was simply the cost of progress. We, as consumers, bought it up. That is until we see market distortion. Then we realize, oh no, but sometimes it's too late. Prices today are not just higher, they're structurally elevated. And unlike past generations, today's memory price, well, their increases don't seem to ever fully reverse. Retail kits have quadrupled in price compared with early 2025 levels, and in some cases, even higher than that. You read that right, 4 times the cost in less than a year. That's not normal. It's a market reshaping itself around scarcity and demand priorities that exclude us, the everyday consumer. But what's happened in such a short time to demand these price spikes? The short answer is the AI demand. Major AI data centers have been purchasing memory in enormous quantities, often outbidding traditional consumer segments. Memory manufacturers are shifting production toward high bandwidth and server-oriented chips because they generate huge profit margins, leaving less inventory for consumer RAM. That's the RAM we put in our computers. On top of this, we have an industry report that found that DRAM prices jumped 171% year over year, outpacing even the price of gold. Meanwhile, long-term memory supply chains are tightening as DDR4 production is phased out and new capacity for advanced chips is still ramping up. This isn't just a short blip. It's structural, and it seems like it's going to continue. So then came a rumor. Online whispers said that ASUS was going to become a real player in manufacturing RAM, not just reselling it under its own label, but actually carving into the memory supply chain. PC builders got excited, me included. Prices could come down. The market might actually open up for the first time in years. And if you don't know this, there are only really 3 major memory suppliers in the world. Everyone else has small time. That's damn near a monopoly, to be honest. And there are other companies in the computer space that are also driving up prices, like graphics cards. Nvidia is driving up their prices. AMD is driving up their prices. And if you don't know this, AMD and Nvidia founders, or top staff, I should say, I don't know if they're founders off the top of my head, I don't remember, but their top staff are cousins. Can you believe that? So whatever one does, the other one does, and they essentially control a large part of the market and determining the prices. So when ASUS was coming in, we thought, man, this is something new. It could really shake things up. But then nothing. No major new RAM product line. No stock of ASUS manufactured modules. Just silence. That rumor was debunked. And the memory market marched on with no major disruption. Prices stayed high. A big brand didn't suddenly destabilize the status quo. It was a tease without impact. So, recent component listings show memory at insane price points. Some 128 gigabyte DDR5 kits nearly $1,500. I mean, that's humorous. Bundled with like gift cards to drive awareness because retailers are struggling to sell them at those prices. Let that sink in. 128 gigabytes DDR5. That is a lot. I have 64 gigabytes in my computer, but I bought those 64 gigabytes at like $200 years ago. $1,500 for 128 gigabytes. Theoretically, at the price I bought it, $400. No. $1,500. That's insane. Other manufacturers are even warning of further increases in 2026. More money, more problems. Come on, dude. Meanwhile, PC builders are reacting in forums and pricing tools showing real-world price hikes in both DDR4 and DDR5 segments. This isn't a temporary surge. It's a repricing of the entire memory landscape. And you might think, like most people, that RAM prices, well, RAM's something you put in your PC. It's only going to hurt PC builders. Well, that's wrong. Consoles rely on the same memory ecosystem. Modern systems like PlayStation and Xbox use high-speed, unified memory that drives everything from texture streaming to world simulation. As memory prices rise, console manufacturers face a choice. They could absorb the added cost, they could rise retail prices to keep their profit margin, or they could just delay next-gen hardware until prices ease at least a little bit. And several industry forecasts now suggest consoles could see price increases of around 10 to 15% over the next few years if memory costs remain high. Some analysts even predict next-gen machines might launch significantly above historical pricing, or that Sony and Microsoft might delay launches to even avoid selling at a loss. Even if they price it up, they are still worried about selling at a loss. My goodness. But why? Because memory and other components now make up far larger portions of the console bill of materials than in previous generation. I mean, the cost of the price of my machine now costs more than my Xbox I bought. That's insane. And then we get into the nitty-gritty. Console makers traditionally secure bulk pricing via long-term contracts with suppliers, and that usually protects them from short-term market swings. But in the current crunch, even those contracts are being renegotiated or delayed. And some suppliers have even stopped issuing long-term quotes altogether, focusing instead on the high-value AI clients that are buying up their high value supply. And that means companies like Microsoft and Sony could be less shielded than we assumed. A recent leak suggested that Microsoft may have not locked in long-term memory deals as aggressively as competitors, making Xbox hardware pricing more vulnerable. And they've already announced several price hikes to their next console. Imagine a console costing more than $1,000. That could become a reality with this next generation. And if a major console maker has to renegotiate key memory pricing at higher market rates, those costs don't just disappear. They're either going to shrink margins or show up in higher consumer prices. And I fear that's what's going to happen. And this affects game design and industry standards as a whole. It's more expensive memory. Okay, it doesn't just affect hardware cost, it's going to affect game design. Developers often target what they believe is baseline hardware. When that baseline inches upward every generation because memory has to cost more, developers are going to shift requirements instead of optimization. This is going to result in minimum spec inflate. Recommended specs become unreachable for the average buyer, and optimization becomes treated like a luxury, not a discipline. If you're not already upgraded, you're gonna get left behind. And if you choose a different hobby, at this point, I can't blame you, because the prices can be insane. So you're stuck with high prices. Well, let's get real about what you can do. Memory prices rising doesn't mean you must upgrade now. Waiting forces suppliers to adjust to real demand, not panic buying. And this is what I would usually recommend. The main problem we're seeing though is that our wallets might not be determining RAM prices anymore. And instead, data AI centers might be the ones deciding what RAM prices are going to sell for. It's their wallets that might matter. And with data centers buying so much RAM that RAM is literally just sitting there because they don't have anywhere to plug it in. They've run out of hardware to plug the RAM into, and yet they're still buying more in anticipation of their needs. How can we combat that with our wallets? So the second thing we can really do is support transparency. Brands that explain pricing and performance clearly might deserve our attention, and confusion lets price gouging hide in plain sight. So we need to know what we're buying. Maybe support transparency. That's a second option, even if it's at a slightly higher price. Option number 3 is to push back on lazy ports. If a game uses excessive RAM without justification, calling it out with refunds or reviews might teach developers that optimization matters, and that with our limited RAM and our unending budget like data AI centers, they need to optimize for what's reasonable for the new consumer value. Option 4 is to buy smarter. Sometimes waiting for stable contracts and production volume might not be just patience, but it might be savings. Real pressure comes not from outrage, but from informed purchasing behavior. So wait and make great purchasing behaviors based on you and your economics. If you have a price that seems reasonable for RAM, then buy. Support a company that's transparent and optimizes for you and your gaming rig. And overall, if you're just trying to build a PC right now, it might be your first PC and you don't have old or existing RAM, you might have to settle for the old stuff. And that might not run the games you're looking to play. It's a sad reality that gaming might be on a downtrend. The next generation might not be able to afford computers. Heck, they might not even be able to afford consoles anymore. It's crazy. So this is no fairy tale, it's just reality. PC gaming wasn't saved. It wasn't ruined in a single event though. It was reshaped by markets, by enterprise demand, by shifting economics that value some sectors over the everyday gamer. The ASUS rumor, a glimpse of hope that never materialized. The console price impacts, a wake-up call that RAM costs don't respect hardware boundaries. At the end of the day, PC gaming is still alive, but the era of affordable upgrades and easy scalability, that might be behind us for a while. And unless new competition actually enters the market, not just gets whispered about, this pricing pressure is the new normal. I wish y'all the best of luck in the years to come. Like, subscribe, comment, all that jazz for YouTube. I'll catch y'all on the next one. Peace.